Hey, it's Keith. What's up? Hey, so it's time for a simple talk. I, I, I don't even give a shit. I just proceeded that thing I wanted to get right to the bones about. I've been forming this idea. Let's go over to the corner that gets me inspiration, right? Especially in the morning. Little gnomes and fairies over here. This is where they hide out all the time. Haha. Mr. Gnome Man. I think I called him an elf before. It's a gnome. Oh, okay, so about science. God, this is a rough subject because I don't discount science, but there's a lot of possibilities where we don't really plug into science. So here's the basic thing of like when a person goes, oh, there's no science on that, or oh, this or that or whatever. So I'm just going to get right to the point. So having that assumption assumes that science knows everything. Of when you like get an intuitive idea about stuff, and this has a lot to do with the people that are on the internet, like some early vegan gain stuff, especially this chick called Unnatural Vegan, who has this very vibey thing of like where she seemed like she just rolled off the college debate team turnip truck and is very like aggressive with like finding her Western knowledge about something, about an issue, like does science exist on it or not? So that assumes that science knows everything, and that's just wrong. And then also it makes the assumption that everything that is known is written down. And then thirdly, it assumes that there's no bias as you move from community to community, from culture to culture, from one side of the world to the other side of the world. And so specifically there, I'm talking about like the idea of like doing research on nutrients and this and that and listening to neo health people like Dr. Doug McDougall and some of these people that are just like kind of newly into the vegetarian world or that are new, like in the last, like, even though they're old people, they're like, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have that much investment in all that stuff. So the point of saying all of that is that, so it assumes that there's no bias when you go from community to community, from country to country, from ancient civilization to ancient civilization and all of its stuff that it drags up there. And so specifically, cut to the chase, Keith, I'm talking exactly about Western medicine and Chinese medicine. I would say those are two that not that I necessarily have a lot of expertise with Western medicine. I've just been around it a lot. But I'm just knowing the differences in those two. And I'm simply trying to say is that Western medicine really doesn't give a lot of credence to traditional Chinese medicine. The things that have to do with acupuncture, their vast cornucopia of the knowledge of plants and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, some of these amazing substances like reishi are just beginning to be studied in a way that's serious. And a lot of these organizations that people quote and stuff, they're real fucking shady. So, okay, so the basic thing is how do you prove what's not science with science? That has a lot to do with magic stuff and psychic phenomena, intuition, just anything that's sort of metaphysical in general. I have a real problem with science. It really limits everything. The atheist point of view of just like, damn, it's like there's so much order here. There's so much ridiculous order here. You just look at your hand. Hold your hand out in front of you. Let's get out back out in the light. Okay. So just hold your hand out in front of you and there's like 7 billion people that do that. You're going to just tell me that that was some random chaotic accident of like what? Of what's the most prevalent substances in the universe? You know, hydrogen. It was just a basis of hydrogen, oxygen, these base elements, heat and cold and gravity, and sort of just a chaotic nature that made that happen. That's an amazing piece of machinery. But all the order and everything else, just like, that's just one I'm just like, come on, please, really? Oh, why did we go on that rant of just, science seems to favor like a sort of atheist point of view. So I think I need to stop talking about that right now. We could talk about that more, but for where I'm going as I keep blogging and getting more serious about blogging, we need to get that science thing out of the way, because it's a bitch. It's a bitch like the religious dogma of the Dark Ages was a bitch. Science is now in the same position as science is now in the same position as the church was in the Dark Ages, of where it's an old standby, and it tends to like, it would like to, ultimately all of those guys would love to like just do like a witch trial thing with anybody that's not science and just have them like hung and killed or put in jail or something like that, for sure. They're very aggressive with that. They think like, I've become sadly disappointed in a lot of people. Carl Sagan, for his like usage of the word pseudoscience and woo-woo and all those kind of stuff. It's like, really? We live in a doubters society, so there's like, it's like so obvious. And like, once you start tuning into like tarot cards, of doing a card every day and opening your mind and realizing that there is something bigger than just what we think we know. So again, when all is said and done, the thing with science is that putting all this faith in science and not realizing that there's not something beyond science. Oh, that's what else I wanted to say, is that a few of the biggest science minds that some of the science community like love as like heroic Jesus Christ type people is, I'll tell you 3 or 4, at least 3. 3 come to mind, maybe 4, because we'll mention him too. So Sir Isaac Newton, John Dee, Albert Einstein, and what's the guy's name there? Tesla, Mr. Tesla, Nikolai Tesla, is that his name? All of these people suggested, in fact, when they found Sir Isaac Newton's manuscript and found out that he had as much information in his manuscripts, his life's work that was found on paper somewhere, he had so much information that was as much about magic and alchemy that it's just like, come on. And then John Dee, that guy is a very interesting person when you start getting into conspiracy theories and like things to do with spirits and intervention with some of the powers that have run the world. John Dee was considered probably one of the most intelligent men of all of human known of our written history, which doesn't say everything. So that's a big thing with science too, is Again, it assumes that everything's written down. So John Dee's a big guy in our written history, mathematician, then also astrologer, advisor, magician, person that had a lot of dabblings to do with spirits and angels and the whole idea of Enochian alphabets and communing with angels and higher selves and holy guardian angels and all that stuff. He had a lot of stuff on that, and he was very involved with what would possibly be the beginnings of Freemasonry or Illuminati. And I'm not an expert on all those divisions, but there's ties to all that shit, which is very interesting, which starts coming into play with sacred geometry and all of that stuff, like sacred geometry and stuff. The science doesn't bow its head to any of that stuff of like the Fibonacci sequence and all that kind of, just so many things of where you go, really? You think there's no like divine design, a divine order, or like a magician that is the ultimate musician of reality in the fabric of like all that we are? I talked way longer than I wanted to, but you got to hear some of my techno music. It's or my ambient techno, I guess, is what I'm playing in there now. So support me by supporting my music. secondculture.bandcamp.com. Second Culture is one word. And then my website, I got stuff coming up. I'm trying to get my whole restart going. I've learned a lot about stuff, but hey, I dig you. I love blogging. Thank you for watching and being interested. And I'm sorry I haven't gotten to comments. Like, I got comments that I haven't answered that go clear back to when I was in Phuket, actually, or maybe even further back than that. And I promise I'm going to that. I'm just me, and sometimes I'm lazy. I'm doing interesting things all the time, but I'm not always doing what I should be doing day by day by day.